Olivia Blackwood, 29, sat frozen at the family dinner table as her sister's words hung in the air. "You have 3 days to leave the house." The smirk on Rebecca's face and the cold silence from her parents shattered everything Olivia thought she knew about family loyalty. What began as a typical Sunday dinner had become the first domino in a chain reaction that would expose decades of family secrets, shatter relationships, and ultimately lead Olivia to discover that blood ties sometimes bind you to people who've been plotting your downfall since childhood. Before I continue with this shocking story of family betrayal, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and while you're there, hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Have you ever suspected a family member was hiding something from you? You won't believe where this family revenge drama leads. Stick around to see how karma eventually comes full circle. Olivia Blackwood had always been the golden child in her family, at least that's what everyone in their affluent Boston suburb believed. With her Yale law degree, promising career at a prestigious firm, and picture-perfect engagement to fellow attorney James Crawford, she embodied everything her parents had worked for. The Blackwood family name carried weight in local social circles, largely due to her father Richard's position as a Superior Court judge, and her mother Eleanor's leadership in several influential charity organizations. Rebecca, 2 years younger, had lived perpetually in Olivia's shadow. While Olivia collected academic honors and professional accolades, Rebecca bounced between half-finished degrees and short-lived jobs. Their parents never missed an opportunity to highlight the contrast. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" The comparison became the background music of their childhood, growing louder as they entered adulthood. That fateful Sunday dinner had started normally enough. Olivia arrived at her parents' sprawling colonial home, the house where she and Rebecca had grown up, bringing an expensive bottle of wine to complement her mother's roast beef. James couldn't join. He was finalizing a major case that would likely make him partner. Olivia had shared this news proudly, watching her father nod with approval. "When's the wedding date again?" Eleanor asked, passing the mashed potatoes. "We need to book the club soon if we want that Memorial Day weekend." "We're thinking about moving it up actually," Olivia replied, unable to contain her smile. "James might get the Hensley account, which means we could afford that house in Cambridge we've been eyeing." Rebecca, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that sliced through the conversation. "Something funny?" Richard Blackwood asked, his judge's stare turning to his younger daughter. "Just enjoying the performance," Rebecca replied, swirling her wine. "It's always so convincing." Olivia felt a flicker of unease. "What are you talking about? The perfect daughter act. You've really mastered it." Rebecca placed her glass down deliberately. "But I guess the curtain has to fall sometime." Eleanor cleared her throat. "Rebecca, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Mom? After she moves into that Cambridge house using Dad's money? Or after she marries James, who I found at the Hawthorne last night with his tongue down his secretary's throat?" The silence that followed felt like a physical force. Olivia's fork clattered against her plate. "You're lying. Check his texts. Or better yet, check the security footage I convinced the bartender to email me." Rebecca pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. "Password is your birthday." "How thoughtful of him." Olivia's hands trembled as she entered the code. The video was grainy but unmistakable. James, her fiancé of 3 years, intimately entangled with his young secretary against the bar's back wall. The timestamp showed 1:37 p.m. the previous night, when he'd told her he was working late. This could be. It might not be. Olivia couldn't finish the sentence as she scrolled to see text messages between them spanning months. "That's not all," Rebecca continued, her voice oddly calm. "Tell her the rest, Dad." Richard Blackwood's face had gone ashen. "This isn't how we planned to discuss this." Discuss what? Olivia looked between her parents, who suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. Eleanor sighed. "Sweetie, there have been some discrepancies at the firm." The managing partners contacted your father privately as a courtesy before they go to the bar association. Discrepancies, Olivia repeated. Embezzlement, Rebecca supplied bluntly. From client accounts. They've traced it to your access codes. Olivia felt the room tilt. That's impossible. I haven't. They have evidence. Liv, her father interrupted, using her childhood nickname that now felt like a mockery. Substantial evidence. Over $300,000 missing over the past 18 months. All those designer clothes, the luxury vacations with James, that ridiculous engagement ring. We all wondered how you afforded it all on an associate's salary, Rebecca added. I got bonuses, promotions, Olivia started, but her defense sounded hollow even to her own ears. The firm is filing charges on Monday, Richard said, his voice taking on the formal tone he used in court. Given my position, I can't be seen interfering or showing favoritism. We think it's best if you're not here when that happens. You have 3 days to leave the house, Rebecca repeated her earlier ultimatum, now contextualized by the bombshells that had dropped one after another. Before the press gets wind of this, Dad can't have a daughter facing embezzlement charges living at home while he's up for the federal bench appointment. Olivia turned to her mother, desperately seeking an ally, but Eleanor was studiously rearranging her napkin. You can't believe this, Olivia whispered. Someone's setting me up. I would never. The evidence is quite compelling, Richard interrupted. Multiple withdrawals, all traced to your computer, your passwords. Money transferred to offshore accounts that funded those credit cards you've been flashing around. We've already consulted with Stanley, Eleanor added, referencing their family attorney. He thinks the best approach is for you to cooperate fully, return what you can, and hope for leniency. Olivia felt like she was drowning. And James? Have you told him about these accusations? A look passed between her parents and Rebecca that sent ice through Olivia's veins. James was the one who brought the evidence to the partners, Rebecca said almost gently, as if delivering a mercy blow. Apparently he's known for months, but wanted to gather enough proof to protect himself from any implication. The secretary is just a bonus, I guess. The perfect life Olivia had believed in just 30 minutes ago lay in shards around her. Her fiancé, her career, her reputation, her family's support. All gone in less time than it took to eat a main course that now sat cold and forgotten on bone china plates. Where am I supposed to go? Olivia asked, her voice small and unfamiliar to her own ears. Rebecca shrugged. Not our problem. You made your choices. As the implications crashed over her, one question burned through the shock. Why did it seem like her family had been waiting almost eagerly for her fall from grace? The next morning, Olivia woke in her childhood bedroom with swollen eyes and a clarity that only comes after crying until there are no tears left. She'd spent the night alternating between numbing disbelief and frantic searches through her financial records, finding nothing that could explain the alleged embezzlement. James wasn't answering her calls or texts, his silence an admission that Rebecca's revelations were true. She dressed methodically and drove to her firm's offices using her keycard one last time. The weekend security guard nodded at her, unaware that by Monday her credentials would be revoked and her name would become toxic in legal circles across Massachusetts. Olivia headed straight to her office, ignoring the emptiness of the normally bustling space. Weekend work was common for associates, so her presence wouldn't raise immediate alarms. At her computer, she bypassed the standard login and used the emergency IT override she'd learned from helping the tech team during a system crash last year. If someone had used her credentials to embezzle funds, the digital trail would exist somewhere. 3 hours later, Olivia stared at her screen, hands shaking with both fear and fury. She found the transactions, dozens of them, siphoning money from client escrow accounts, in amounts just small enough to avoid automatic flags. But the trail didn't lead to any offshore accounts in her name. Instead, the money had been routed through a complex series of transfers that eventually led to a shell company, Blackwood Holdings LLC. Blackwood, her family name. Further digging revealed the company had been established 18 months ago, registered under a P.O. box in Cambridge. The timing aligned perfectly with when her father had begun experiencing financial strain from what he'd described as market downturns. It also coincided with when he'd started pursuing the federal judgeship, a position that required extensive political networking, fundraising dinners, and donations to the right causes. "They set me up," Olivia whispered to the empty office. "My own family. But why?" The question gnawed at her as she downloaded evidence to a secure drive. The Blackwoods weren't hurting for money. Her father's judicial salary combined with her mother's family inheritance had always provided more than enough. There had to be something else. She delved deeper, pulling financial records for her parents that she technically shouldn't have access to. What she found made her stomach turn. Her father had made a series of catastrophic investments 3 years ago, losing millions in a tech startup that proved to be fraudulent. Rather than admit the failure he'd been covering the losses by borrowing from increasingly questionable sources, including people who had appeared in his courtroom. If this came to light, not only would his federal appointment vanish, but his current position and possibly his freedom would be at risk. Richard Blackwood needed money and he needed a scapegoat. But that still didn't explain Rebecca's involvement or her apparent glee at Olivia's downfall. Digging further into her sister's digital footprint, Olivia discovered something that made the betrayal cut even deeper. Rebecca had been hired 6 months ago by none other than Hensley International, the account James was pursuing. Her position, special consultant with a salary 3 times what Olivia was making as a senior associate. The pieces were falling into place. James needed the Hensley account to make partner. Rebecca had connections at Hensley. Their father needed money and a way to hide his financial misdeeds. Olivia was the perfect patsy, the golden child whose fall from grace would be so shocking that no one would look beyond the surface. As she gathered evidence, Olivia found one more devastating detail: emails between Rebecca and James dating back 2 years. Their affair had begun shortly after Olivia had introduced them at a family Christmas party. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. "Working late again," the voice from the doorway made Olivia jump. James stood there, his casual weekend attire at odds with his tense expression. "Security called me when your keycard was used. Thought you might try something like this." Olivia quickly minimized the screens, but maintained her composure. "Just clearing out some personal files before Monday." "Noble of you to try to clean up your mess," he said, stepping into the office. "Though it's a bit late for that." "Is it?" Olivia stood, subtly sliding the flash drive into her pocket. "I thought I had 3 days before the firm filed charges." James's smile didn't reach his eyes. The timelines accelerated. "Judge Blackwood thought it best to get ahead of the story. My father called you." The pieces clicked further into place. "We've been in close contact throughout this unfortunate situation," James replied smoothly. "He's concerned about you, Olivia. We all are. These actions, they're not like you." The performance was almost admirable. The concerned fiancé, the dedicated professional, the man who had no choice but to report his beloved's crimes. If she hadn't seen the evidence herself, she might have believed him. "You know what's interesting about digital forensics?" Olivia kept her voice conversational. "IP addresses, timestamps, authentication logs. They tell stories that people can't hide." His expression flickered. "What exactly are you implying?" "Nothing yet. But I think the managing partners might be interested in knowing who actually accessed those accounts. Or how Blackwood Holdings connects to all this. Or perhaps your relationship with my sister might raise some questions about motive." James took a step forward, his facade cracking. "You can't prove anything, can't I?" Olivia gathered her purse, maintaining eye contact. "I learned from the best after all. Yale Law's top graduate daughter of Judge Blackwood. I know how evidence works. No one will believe you over your father and the firm's partners, James hissed, dropping all pretense. You're just a disgraced associate trying to deflect blame. Olivia smiled, a cold, unfamiliar expression that made James take an involuntary step back. Perhaps. But I've always been thorough. It's why you loved me once. Remember my attention to detail. As she walked past him toward the door, she added, 3 days, James. That's how long you gave me to leave my home. I think it's only fair I give you the same deadline to come clean, before I take what I've found to people even your connections can't reach. The look of genuine alarm on his face was the first honest thing she'd seen from him, in what she now realized had been years. Olivia drove aimlessly after leaving the office, her mind racing through possibilities and plans. She couldn't go home, not to the house where her family waited with false sympathy and real impatience for her departure. Her apartment was leased under both her and James's names. He'd surely be waiting there. Hotel stays would leave a credit card trail they could follow. Finally, she parked outside a small coffee shop in Cambridge and called the one person who had no connection to her family or professional life, Mia Chen, her freshman roommate from Yale, who now worked as a cybersecurity specialist for a tech firm. I need help, Olivia said when Mia answered. And I can't explain everything over the phone. 3 hours later, they sat in Mia's apartment surrounded by computers as Olivia laid out the entire story. Mia listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. So basically, your father's in financial trouble, possibly ethical trouble too. Your sister's been sleeping with your fiancé while working for his biggest potential client, and they've all conspired to frame you for embezzlement. Mia summarized. That's operatically dysfunctional, even by rich people standards. Can you help me prove it? Olivia asked. I have the files I pulled, but I need someone who understands digital forensics better than I do. Mia cracked her knuckles. Let's see what you've got. For the next several hours they dissected the evidence. Mia confirmed what Olivia had discovered, and found even more. The embezzlement had begun exactly when Judge Richard Blackwood had made the third and largest payment to a man named Victor Crane, a real estate developer who had appeared before Richard's court 2 years earlier in a zoning dispute that was suspiciously ruled in Crane's favor, despite overwhelming evidence against him. Your dad's dirty, Mia said bluntly. This goes beyond bad investments. He's been taking bribes using his position to favor certain parties, and now he's stealing from your law firm's clients through you to cover his tracks. And Rebecca and James. Olivia pressed. Opportunists, Mia replied, pulling up the email correspondence between them. Look at the timeline. Rebecca approached James after she got the Hensley job, offering him an in with their executives. In exchange, he helped set up the digital trail pointing to you. Classic quid pro quo. She gets revenge on the sister who outshined her. He gets the account that makes him partner. The betrayal cut deeper than Olivia could have imagined. What about my mother? Is she involved too? Mia hesitated. There's no direct evidence in these files, but there are large transfers from your parents' joint account to Blackwood Holdings. She'd have to know something. The realization that her entire family had conspired against her left Olivia feeling hollow. These were the people who had shaped her values, who had taught her about integrity and justice, all while planning her professional execution. I need to confront them, Olivia said, finally. All of them together. That's a terrible idea, Mia countered. These people have already shown they're willing to destroy your life. You should take this evidence straight to the FBI or the State Bar Association. And then what? Even if I clear my name, my career is still damaged. My father could use his connections to bury this, or delay it until the statute of limitations runs out. I need them to confess. Mia looked skeptical. How exactly do you plan to make that happen? Olivia pulled out her phone and played the video Rebecca had shown her of James with his secretary. They love setting traps. Maybe it's time they fell into one of mine. By Sunday afternoon, the deadline her family had given her to leave their home, Olivia had formulated her plan. With Mia's help, she prepared a digital package of evidence that would automatically send to the managing partners of her firm, the State Bar Association, the Judicial Conduct Committee, and several journalists, if she didn't enter a specific code every 1-2 hours. She also made two crucial discoveries. First, the Hensley account that James coveted was contingent on passing an extensive ethics review as the company had recently faced its own financial scandal. Second, Rebecca's position at Hensley was probationary. Any hint of impropriety would result in immediate termination. Armed with this knowledge and Mia's technical assistance, Olivia returned to her parents' home exactly 72 hours after the dinner that had shattered her world. She wasn't surprised to find James's car in the driveway alongside Rebecca's. Perfect timing, she murmured to herself. The whole conspiracy in one place. As she entered the house using her key, she could hear them in the dining room, the same setting where they had delivered their ultimatum. She paused in the hallway, listening. She hasn't been back to the apartment, James was saying. Security at the firm said she left with a flash drive yesterday. Does it matter? Rebecca's voice was dismissive. The partners have already seen the evidence. It's her word against all of ours. It matters if she has copies of the transfer records. Richard Blackwood replied, his tone sharp. The last thing we need is her finding connections to Blackwood Holdings. I told you we should have used a different name, Eleanor said, confirming her complicity. Something less obvious. Nobody was supposed to look that closely, Richard snapped. The partners were supposed to see the evidence we planted and act immediately. They are acting, James assured him. They're filing first thing tomorrow morning. I've already drafted a statement expressing my shock and heartbreak at discovering my fiancé's betrayal. How poetic, Rebecca laughed. Will you mention how you've been consoling yourself with me for the past 2 years? Rebecca Eleanor chided. Let's maintain some decorum. Olivia had heard enough. She stepped into the dining room doorway, smartphone recording in her pocket. Decorum. That's what you're concerned about, Mother. Not the conspiracy to frame your daughter for crimes she didn't commit. The four faces that turned toward her registered identical shock, followed quickly by varying attempts at recovery. Olivia Eleanor stood. We weren't expecting you until you'd cleared out my belongings, or until after James here had filed charges against me, or perhaps until Dad's federal appointment was secured. Olivia remained in the doorway, blocking exit. Timing is everything, isn't it? Richard recovered first. Whatever you think you know, I know everything, Olivia, cut him off. About Blackwood Holdings, about Victor Crane, about the money you've been funneling through accounts you accessed using my credentials. I know about James and Rebecca's little arrangement to secure the Hensley account. I know how long they've been sleeping together. She turned to her mother. And I know you've been helping cover up Dad's financial misdeeds for years. The silence that followed was deafening. It was James who broke it. You can't prove any of that, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Can't I? Olivia pulled out her phone, showing them the screen. I've spent the past 3 days gathering evidence. Right now, everything I've found is packaged and ready to send to the managing partners, the Bar Association, the Judicial Conduct Committee, and several very interested journalists. All it takes is for me to miss entering a code in the next. She checked the time, 11 hours and 27 minutes. I know this family revenge drama has taken an intense turn, and I'm dying to know what you think might happen next. Before we continue to the shocking confrontation, take a second to hit that like button if you're Team Olivia, and subscribe so you don't miss the moment when justice finally comes for this backstabbing family. What would you do if you discovered your entire family had been plotting against you? Let me know in the comments, and let's keep going with this wild ride. The Blackwood dining room, with its expensive wallpaper and heirloom furniture, had witnessed decades of family performances, holiday gatherings, where tensions simmered beneath polite conversation, celebratory dinners, marking achievements that fueled Rebecca's resentment, and now the final act of a conspiracy unraveling. The tableau before Olivia was almost artistic in its composition, 4 people frozen in various stages of shock and calculation. "You're bluffing," Rebecca finally said, though her voice wavered slightly. "You couldn't have possibly gathered enough evidence in 3 days. You'd be surprised what motivation does for efficiency," Olivia replied coolly, "especially when I had access to the firm's servers and Dad's financial records. Did you know he never changed the password to his investment accounts, still using your birthday, Rebecca, just like James does on his phone?" Richard Blackwood's face had gone from ashen to crimson. "This is absurd. You're just trying to deflect from your own crimes." "My crimes?" Olivia laughed, the sound brittle. "Let's be specific about whose crimes we're discussing." She pulled a chair from the table and sat, placing her phone face up where everyone could see the countdown timer. "Shall we start with the $300,000 that disappeared from client accounts? The money that somehow found its way to Blackwood Holdings, which then paid off Victor Crane, a defendant who mysteriously won a case in your courtroom despite overwhelming evidence against him." Her father's eyes narrowed. "You have no proof of any connection." "The bank transfers provide plenty of proof. As does the timing of your ruling in Crane's favor and the subsequent payments. The Judicial Ethics Committee will find it fascinating reading." Eleanor, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Richard, what is she talking about?" Olivia turned to her mother, studying her face. "You really didn't know, or are you just maintaining plausible deniability?" "She knows nothing," Richard snapped. "Leave her out of this." "I found her signature on the Blackwood Holdings paperwork," Olivia countered. "Right alongside yours. So either she knew exactly what was happening, or you forged her signature, which opens up a whole new category of crimes." Eleanor's face crumpled slightly. "Richard, you told me that company was for estate planning purposes." "It was," he insisted. Olivia's twisting things. "Bank records don't lie, Dad." Olivia turned to James, who had been edging toward the door. "Going somewhere? I haven't even gotten to your part in this yet. How you used my login credentials to access those accounts after hours. How you planted the evidence the firm discovered. How you've been plotting with my sister while planning our wedding." James straightened, adopting the confident posture he used in courtrooms. "You have no proof I accessed anything. Digital forensics can be manipulated. You, of all people, should know that." "True. But humans are predictable. You used the same pattern for all your passwords, James. A sports figure's jersey number, followed by the year they won a championship, followed by an exclamation point. For your work computer, it's Brady12019. For your email, it's Williams232003. I had access to everything once I figured that out." The color drained from his face. "You hacked my accounts. That's illegal. So is framing someone for embezzlement. So is having an affair with your fiancé's sister to secure a client." Speaking of which, Olivia turned to Rebecca. "Hensley International has a zero-tolerance policy for ethics violations. It's why they hired you to help clean up their image after their CFO's scandal last year. How do you think they'll react when they learn about your role in all this?" Rebecca's smirk had vanished entirely. "You would destroy your own family." "Your own sister." "My sister Olivia," repeated incredulous. "The person who celebrated my downfall, who slept with my fiancé for 2 years, who helped set me up to take the fall for Dad's crimes. That sister." "It was never supposed to go this far," Eleanor interjected, her voice small. "We just needed some time to fix the financial situation. By stealing from clients. By destroying my career. By having me potentially face criminal charges." Olivia's composure cracked slightly. "What exactly was your endgame here? After I was disbarred and possibly imprisoned, then what?" A heavy silence fell over the room. It was Richard who finally spoke, his judicial authority falling away to reveal something smaller and more desperate. We would have made it right eventually. Once the federal appointment came through, I would have had the resources to replace the money. No one would have been permanently harmed. Except me, Olivia said quietly. You've always landed on your feet, Rebecca countered, bitterness seeping through. The golden child with every advantage. One setback wouldn't have ruined you. A setback? Olivia stared at her sister in disbelief. You call embezzlement charges a setback? The destruction of my professional reputation, my career, my future. That's how you justify this. You were always Dad's favorite, Rebecca hissed. Always the perfect daughter while I was just the disappointment. Do you know what that's like? To always be measured against someone and found wanting. So this was revenge, for being successful, for being loved more. Rebecca's voice broke. For being the one they invested everything in while I was an afterthought. Olivia looked between her parents, seeing the truth of Rebecca's words, reflected in their uncomfortable expressions. The family dynamic she had taken for granted suddenly appeared in a different light, not just her achievements, but the uneven distribution of their parents' attention and approval. That doesn't justify what you've done, Olivia said finally. None of you. What do you want? James asked. Pragmatic even in crisis. Obviously you came here with some objective beyond exposing us. Olivia nodded, regaining her composure. I want a confession. From all of you, documented and notarized. Admitting to the embezzlement scheme, the frame-up, all of it. I want my name completely cleared with the firm and the Bar Association. That's professional suicide for all of us, James protested. Yes, Olivia agreed simply. It is. There must be another way, Richard began. Perhaps a financial settlement. This isn't negotiable, Olivia cut him off. Confession and full clearing of my name, or I release everything I've found. You have 10 hours to decide. As she stood to leave, Rebecca called after her. Where did you get this backbone, Olivia? You've always been the rule follower, the people pleaser. Olivia paused at the doorway. I learned it from watching all of you. The difference is, I'm using it to pursue justice, not cover up crimes. Olivia spent the night at Mia's apartment waiting. Her phone remained silent for the first 6 hours after she left her family home, then began buzzing continuously with calls and messages, first from her mother, then James, even Rebecca. Her father predictably maintained his silence. Judge Richard Blackwood had never been one to plead. They're panicking, Mia observed as Olivia's phone lit up for the 20th time. Classic stages of dealing with exposure, denial, then anger, now bargaining. Olivia scrolled through the text messages without responding. Eleanor, please call me sweetheart. We can fix this as a family. James, you're making a mistake. There are better solutions for everyone. Rebecca, don't be stupid, Liv. You'll regret going nuclear. They still think they can control me, Olivia murmured. That I'll eventually fall back in line. Will you? Mia asked, studying her friend's face. They're your family after all. Olivia looked up from her phone. Family doesn't do what they did to me. And they're forgetting something important. What's that? I trained under Judge Richard Blackwood my entire life. I know exactly how he thinks, how he operates. He taught me everything about leverage and strategy, lessons he's now forgotten he imparted. At the 8-hour mark, Olivia received the call she'd been waiting for. Richard Blackwood's name flashed on her screen. Ready? She asked Mia, who nodded and began recording the call. Olivia. Her father's voice was controlled, professional, his courtroom voice. We should discuss terms. There are no terms to discuss. Just conditions for your compliance. A pause. You've made your point. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. Olivia repeated. That's the kind of passive construction you've always criticized in weak legal arguments. Try again. She could almost hear him grinding his teeth. What we did was wrong. We're prepared to make amends. By providing signed confessions, Olivia stated, not a question. That's where we need to find a compromise. Full confessions would destroy multiple lives, not just those who deserve consequences. Meaning you want to protect yourself and throw someone else under the bus, Olivia translated. Who's the designated scapegoat? This time, Rebecca James, has agreed to take responsibility for the financial improprieties, Richard said carefully. He'll admit to acting alone and creating false evidence against you. Your name will be cleared with the firm. And what does James get in return for this noble sacrifice? We've secured him a position with a firm in Seattle, a fresh start away from the immediate fallout, Olivia laughed. So he confesses to a lesser crime, avoids any real consequences, and gets a cushy new job across the country. Meanwhile, you maintain your judicial appointment prospects, Rebecca keeps her Hensley position, and Mother continues her social reign. How convenient. It's the cleanest solution, Richard insisted. One career damaged instead of 4 destroyed. Counter-offer, Olivia said crisply. Everyone confesses to their actual role. You admit to the Crane payoffs, and using my credentials for the embezzlement. James admits to helping plant evidence against me. Rebecca admits to her part in the conspiracy, and her relationship with James while we were engaged. Mother admits to knowledge of Blackwood Holdings' true purpose. Absolutely not. Then I release everything in. She checked the countdown, just under 2 hours. Your judicial career ends. James is disbarred. Rebecca loses her job. Mother faces potential charges as an accessory. And I still walk away with my name cleared once all the evidence is examined. The silence stretched so long that Olivia thought he might have hung up. What exactly do you want, Olivia? He finally asked, his voice strained. Beyond confessions. Justice, she replied simply. And assurance this never happens again. There must be something else. Money, property, a position somewhere. Your mistake is thinking I'm approaching this as a negotiation. I'm not. I'm approaching it as justice that has only one acceptable outcome. But she paused deliberately. I might be persuaded to keep the confessions private, shared only with the firm's partners and bar association, not the press. If you comply fully, she could almost see him calculating weighing options. We'll need time to draft the documents, he finally said. I've already prepared them. They'll be delivered to you within the hour. Sign them, have them notarized, and return them before the deadline. And if we refuse, then enjoy watching your carefully constructed lives implode on the evening news. After ending the call, Olivia turned to Mia. They'll try to find a loophole or a way to invalidate the confessions later. Mia nodded. That's why we've built in safeguards. The documents are airtight, and we have this recorded call as backup. Plus, she grinned, I've been monitoring their devices since you left the house. Your dad's been researching how to invalidate a coerced confession and statute of limitations on judicial misconduct. So they'll sign, but they'll plan to fight it later. Exactly. Which means we need phase 2 of the plan. Olivia checked her watch. Let's proceed. Contact Stanley Pierce. An hour later, the Blackwood family attorney arrived at Mia's apartment looking uncomfortable. Stanley Pierce had served the Blackwood family for over 30 years, handling everything from real estate transactions to Richard's judicial appointment paperwork. Miss Blackwood, he greeted Olivia formally. This is highly irregular. So is a family conspiring to frame their daughter for embezzlement, she replied. Thank you for coming. She handed him the 4 confession documents, each tailored to the specific actions of her father, mother, sister, and ex-fiancé. These need to be delivered to my family immediately. They must be signed and notarized before the deadline. Stanley reviewed the documents, his expression growing increasingly grave. These allegations, are they substantiated completely? The evidence will be released if they don't comply. And my role in this, you're the family attorney. You're delivering documents requiring signature. Nothing more. Stanley hesitated. Your father has been my client for decades. And in those decades, has he always acted ethically, or have there been other situations you've helped manage? The attorney's silence was answer enough. I thought so, Olivia continued. This is your chance to be on the right side of this particular situation, Stanley. I suggest you take it. As the attorney left with the documents, Olivia turned to Mia. Now comes the hardest part. Waiting. No. Olivia's expression was resolute, preparing for them to make one last, desperate move. With 30 minutes left on the countdown timer, Olivia's phone rang again. This time it was Eleanor. They've signed, her mother said, without preamble. Stanley is bringing the documents to you now. All 4 confessions, notarized. Yes, Eleanor sounded exhausted. Your father wants to speak with you directly about the next steps. There are no next steps, Mother. Once my name is cleared, we're done. A pause. He says there's something you don't know. Something important about why all this happened. Olivia felt a flicker of unease. Put him on, Olivia. Richard's voice was different now, no longer the confident judge, but something more vulnerable. Before you proceed with this, there's something you need to understand. I understand perfectly, she replied coldly. You committed crimes, then tried to frame me when you were at risk of exposure. It's more complicated than that. The Crane situation, it wasn't just about money. He had leverage. What kind of leverage could possibly justify what you did to me? Richard's voice dropped lower. He threatened to expose information about you. Information that would have destroyed you professionally and personally. Olivia felt a chill. What information? The Harrington case from 3 years ago. Your first major win at the firm. The Harrington case had indeed been her breakthrough, a complex corporate litigation matter, where she'd discovered a key piece of evidence that turned the tide in their client's favor. It had put her on the partnership track and established her reputation as a rising legal star. What about it? She asked cautiously. The evidence you found was planted, Olivia, by me. I called in Favor's manipulated documentation to ensure you'd win. Crane discovered this during his own case research and threatened to expose it and you if I ruled against him. Olivia felt the room tilt. That's not possible. I found those documents myself in the discovery process, after I ensured they would be there to find, Richard countered. Check your own records, specifically the chain of custody for those particular files. You'll see the irregularities if you look closely enough. Why would you do that? Because you needed the win, he said simply. Your evaluation was coming up, and the partner overseeing you had doubts about your litigation skills. One more mediocre performance and you'd have been sidelined to contract review indefinitely. Olivia's mind raced, reviewing the Harrington case details. There had been something odd about how easily she'd found that crucial documentation, how perfectly it fit their theory of the case. At the time, she'd attributed it to thorough work and good instincts. So this was what protecting me from my own mistakes, setting me up to take the fall for your crimes because you once helped my career. Her voice hardened. That doesn't justify any of this. No, Richard agreed, surprising her. It doesn't. But it explains why we initially thought you might understand the need for discretion when family interests are at stake. When we told you about the embezzlement accusations, we expected you to accept our help in managing the situation quietly, the way we managed the Harrington irregularities for you. By sacrificing my career and reputation, by taking a strategic setback that the family could help you recover from later. We underestimated your reaction. Olivia's laugh was bitter. You expected me to just accept being framed for crimes I didn't commit because of some misguided belief that I owed you for past favoritism. We expected family loyalty, Eleanor interjected, apparently on speakerphone. The same loyalty we've shown you throughout your life. This isn't loyalty, Mother. This is toxic manipulation. Whatever you call it, Richard continued, you should know that exposing us fully will also expose the Harrington improprieties. Your career won't survive that revelation either. You'll be clearing your name of embezzlement only to be implicated in evidence tampering. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Olivia released all the evidence she'd gathered, the investigation would likely uncover the Harrington case irregularities. If she backed down to protect herself, her family would escape consequences. They were betting on her self-interest, winning out over her desire for justice. They had miscalculated again. "I'll take my chances," Olivia said firmly. "Unlike you, I'm willing to face consequences for my actions, even ones I wasn't fully aware of at the time." "Now, where are those signed confessions?" The doorbell rang. Stanley Pierce stood outside with a manila envelope. "Perfect timing," Olivia said into the phone before ending the call. She accepted the envelope, opening it to find 4 signed and notarized documents exactly as she'd specified. Each detailed the confessor's role in the conspiracy, providing her with everything she needed to clear her name. "They actually signed," Mia marveled, reviewing the papers. "They had no choice," Olivia replied. "But they're counting on me not using these out of self-preservation." "And will you use them?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Yes, but selectively. The firm's managing partners need to see them to clear my name. The Bar Association needs to know about James's ethical violations. But the press doesn't need all the details, at least not yet." "What about your father's claim about the Harrington case?" Olivia grimaced. "I need to investigate that independently. If it's true, I'll address it appropriately. Even if it means consequences for your own career." "Even then," Olivia confirmed. "I didn't knowingly do anything wrong, but if my win was based on manipulated evidence, I have an ethical obligation to disclose that." The next morning, Olivia walked into her firm's offices with her head held high. The managing partners had agreed to an emergency meeting based on her email claiming exonerating evidence. As she entered the conference room, she noticed James's conspicuous absence. Miss Blackwood, the senior partner, greeted her with cautious formality. "You claimed to have evidence contradicting some serious allegations." "I do." She placed the signed confessions on the table. "These documents tell the complete story of how and why client funds were misappropriated and why the evidence pointed to me." As the partners reviewed the confessions, their expressions ranged from shock to outrage. The managing partner looked up at her with new respect. "This is extraordinary. Why would your own family do this to you?" "The reasons are complex and personal," Olivia replied diplomatically. "What matters is that my name is cleared. I trust the firm will issue a formal statement to that effect." "Of course. And James will be facing the consequences of his actions, both with the firm and the Bar Association." As she left the meeting, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still investigations to navigate, possibly including the Harrington case if her father's claims proved true. Her family relationships were irreparably damaged. Her career would require rebuilding. But for the first time in days, she could breathe freely, knowing that justice, however complicated, was being served. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her new office at the State Attorney General's Special Prosecutions Unit. After the dust settled, she had chosen a path dedicated to fighting the very corruption she had experienced firsthand. The nameplate on her desk read, Olivia Chen. She had taken Mia's surname after their friendship evolved into something deeper and more meaningful during the ordeal. Her family had faced their reckonings. Richard had resigned from the bench ahead of formal proceedings. Eleanor had retreated from public life. Rebecca had lost her Hensley position. James had been disbarred in Massachusetts. Justice, like family, came in unexpected forms. What would you do if your entire family betrayed you like mine did? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of family betrayal and sweet karma, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life drama stories every week. Don't forget to share this video with someone who appreciates a good justice-served moment. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Remember that sometimes the family we choose is more loyal than the family we're born into. Until next time.